Hey, what's up, everyone? This is Gary A. Swaby, and this is, a special discussion that we're doing here. I'm here with Mr. Richard Bailey Jr. How you doing, Rich?
Doing good, Gary. What's up, listeners and viewers?
Yep, and it's been a while since, you and me have been here talking about games. Of course, we've been doing the Powercast, where we talk about the Power TV show. We will be doing, more content like that in the future. But, right now, we feel it's time to, get back to the games a little bit because there is a lot of stuff going on. This year has been, a pretty trying year for me. It's been, I've been dealing with a lot of like personal stuff and then also work and everything. So I haven't been, playing games as much in general, which is why I haven't been here talking about them as much. But we all know that there is a game that I have been heavily anticipating for years. And I know you've also, been anticipating it somewhat too. And right now, it's like the number one news story in gaming, like for the past 2 weeks or something. Like this has just been going crazy. Like it gets crazier every single day. So it's about time for us to, come out of retirement and talk about this. So yeah, Cyberpunk 2077. It released on December 10th, I believe. Was it?
Yep.
Was it? Yeah, it was the 10th, right? And that whole week was madness. Like even before it released, there was a lot of rumblings about the game not being what we expected. And then it released, and it just took the world by storm. Like it was just a whirlwind of reactions to the game and what it is. And there's different viewpoints about it. People are having different experiences based on what technology they're using to play it. So yeah, I think it's about time we just we dissect everything and address everything, because I know you and I have our own unique views on what's been happening. So yeah, let's get to it, man. This is the good, the bad, and the buggy. Great title.
Yes.
That was Rich that came up with that, by the way. That's an awesome title. But yeah, so let's get started, man. Let's go from the top of of this explosion. So let's start here, right? So 2012. This is we're kind of at the peak of the Koalition. We have a lot of new blood coming in, new writers. David Jagnall was with us, and he's putting out good work. You and I, are kind of running the site and everything, right? And was it? I can't remember if it was E3. I believe it was, but we saw this teaser trailer coming from CD Projekt, right? And it was the first teaser trailer for Cyberpunk 2077. And that first teaser, it didn't show gameplay, but just the theme alone and the aesthetic of what we saw just captivated everyone. Me, someone who's heavily into these type of hacker stories and sci-fi books and stuff, I've actually read a lot of cyberpunk themed books before, where there's a hacker trying to, take down a corporation, or the character's trying to navigate in a world where corporations are kind of running things and controlling things, and humans are kind of augmented. They have technology inside of them and things like that. It's a theme that's been around for a very long time in literature. And then, of course, the original Cyberpunk was a tabletop kind of game made by Mike Pondsmith. And, that came out in I think it was the late 80s, early 90s. So this theme has been around for a while, right? But when we first saw it, in visual, with graphics and everything, amazing looking graphics at that, I think the world just kind of took a deep breath and just said, wow, I know that game is going to be amazing. We didn't know when to expect it at all, but we just knew it was coming. So Rich, I want to ask you what were your initial thoughts when you first saw that teaser trailer of Cyberpunk? Like, did you instantly have your own expectations of the type of experience you were about to get at some point when you saw that? And how hyped were you at that point?
Well, yeah, that's a very good question. Pretty much when I first saw the teaser trailer, given what CD Projekt Red has done with the Witcher series, I definitely was interested in it. The Witcher 2 was really one of the first games that I played that CD Projekt created. I very much enjoyed the game, and then I started playing Witcher 3, and I was very impressed with how they had evolved with that particular game. So, with playing those two games and seeing this trailer, I definitely was interested. I mean, I liked the idea of the setting, the theme, so on and so forth. So I was definitely interested in seeing how they would pull this off. I wouldn't say that I was highly hyped for it at that point. I just know the pedigree of the last two games they worked on. So I figured, well, it probably would at least be a really good game. I didn't think it was going to be revolutionary, as some people out here, believe that they had for this particular game, I guess. But I figured that it was going to at least be another great game. But I was curious how they would tackle that and how they would make it different from The Witcher 2 and 3.
Yeah, and this teaser was shown before Witcher 3, but at that point I had already played The Witcher 2, I believe. I'd fallen in love with that world, and by proxy I'd fallen in love with CD Projekt. And then we after that teaser, we really started to know them for being the Witcher people, because that's when the hype for The Witcher 3 kind of took off next after the Cyberpunk teaser. And I remember, you've mentioned this already a lot of times. I remember those first, I think it was 2 E3s that we went to, you and I, and CD Projekt had us to see The Witcher 3 behind the scenes, and just the way we were treated by the staff there was excellent. And then when we saw the game, it was excellent, and it just took my breath away. I think both years, The Witcher 3 was my number one game or something. So yeah, that that in itself made me really appreciate the company CD Projekt and what they were capable of. So yeah, that added to the hype and the expectations of Cyberpunk, because I knew that if these guys are capable of doing all this stuff with The Witcher 3 on the PS4 and the Xbox One and everything, then I know that Cyberpunk is going to be crazy whenever that comes out. What was I going to say? And then, let's talk about the Witcher 3 release, right? And how that went. So when the Witcher 3 came out, I was on PC, but I do remember people saying that the game did have bugs day one. It wasn't running 100% perfect for a lot of people. But for me, I was super impressed day one. And then they kept adding a lot of content to the game. And they added free content too. It wasn't like they were making you pay for DLC and expansions. They added a ton of, free content to the game that even to this day I've still yet to finish it all. So that made me appreciate them, because it's wow, they're giving us all of this extra content. I already paid my $60 or £40, whatever it was, right? Actually, we got that game for free. I forgot, but that was another thing that made me love them too, because they gave us The Witcher 3 for free a whole year before it came out. That made me really loyal to the company too. But with that being said, coming from the perspective of a customer though, if I had paid for that game, I would have been super impressed by all the content I got out of that game. And I remember really enjoying my experience. I spent 100 hours in the game, still didn't finish everything, and I still plan to actually go back to that game and give it a more thorough playthrough. So yeah, I was super impressed with The Witcher 3. And what was your perception of The Witcher 3 and how they handled that game when it came out?
Well, yeah, it definitely felt as though they learned a lot from The Witcher 2 and how to improve the next entry in the series. I know you mentioned earlier that, we went to E3 and we had a presentation and just how good the staff was as far as, taking care of the presentation. Well, one thing I definitely want people to understand about E3 is obviously if E3 returns, it's going to be different. Granted everything that's going on right now. But back in the day when we went to E3, a lot of times you would have so many appointments, you would be running from one appointment to the next. What I enjoyed about going to the CDPR appointments is that, it's a very chill, relaxed, environment. And a lot of times they will go out of their way to design their booths. They would, of course, have refreshments, whether you need coffee, whether you need like a snack or any type of food. They will make sure that you were taken care of. And then you pretty much would come there and you would watch a presentation of whatever game they had was coming out. In this case, it was The Witcher 3. I believe that presentation was about an hour long. And then at the end of the presentation, you would, of course, get all types of swag that, people usually get when they go to E3. And it just so happens that year that we went to E3, we had got some statues for The Witcher 3. And in that statue, hidden within the statue, was the actual redemption code for the PC version of the game. And as you said, that was a whole year or so before the game actually came out. So that definitely was unexpected, and it was something where it was designed was you was not supposed to find out about that until you actually opened the package. So I definitely think that the way they handled that perspective was great. And then in terms when the game actually came out, unfortunately, I did not have a gaming PC. I do plan to get a gaming PC like very soon. I was looking at some PCs right before I jumped on the computer to record this, but I didn't have a PC at the time, so I did eventually play the game on console, and I enjoyed the game a lot. I mean, like I said, it is a game though where, like you said, there's a ton of content, so it's hard to really dive into that. And I know we have some of our fellow colleagues, past and present, on the website. Mr. Eddie V, for example, said that he started playing the game and he just couldn't continue playing because there's so much content to dive into. But for those that do take the time to dive into it, you will realize just how much of a world you can become immersed in and how great of an experience it truly is. And what you mentioned earlier about them having the free content, they did have some free content, but they did also eventually have some DLC, because I do recall that they had some expansions that you could pay for. Now, I don't know if the same was the case for PC, but I know on console, you definitely, if you wanted to pay for those expansions, then you had to pay for that stuff if you wanted it. Yeah. But the thing is, there's so much. Oh, no, go ahead. Oh, no, I just going to say, but the thing is that there's so much meat within the actual core game. It's like I could understand why somebody says, well, I don't think I would go back to play that other content. It's just so much to dive into. But again, for those that take the time and dive into the game, you will see it's a pretty great game for what it is, and for for the whole fact of it being that this isn't a series that they own the rights to. I mean, this is something where it's obviously was made by somebody else because there was a book series based on The Witcher, but the way they interpreted it was exactly what you would imagine if this was made into a video game. So they did an excellent job with how they handled the series.
Oh yeah, I should have explained that more earlier, but they did release paid content for it down the line, but if I remember correctly, I think like the first two major expansions were free, were completely free to anyone who bought the game, and then like after that they added a lot more content that you could also pay for and stuff. But the main thing as well about The Witcher 3, and this is something that's going to be relevant later, but I remember that game, it had a super immersive world. Like I really felt like I was in, I forgot the name of the area, but like I really felt like I was there, and it's just like the NPCs and all the characters are so full of life. And then the world is so full of life as well. There's so much to explore. It's definitely one of those games where you can just get super immersed in it, super locked in, and just, you know, forget that you're existing in the real world. So they did an excellent job with the world building in The Witcher 3. So, and
absolutely,
we're going to come back to that later on. But I just wanted to make that, you know, clear. And also you had a lot of like extra content you could do outside of just questing as well. Like the Gwent game, like I spent like 20 hours just playing Gwent, and, you know, walking around trying to collect all the cards and everything to do better in the Gwent matches and stuff. So that just added a whole nother layer to the game. But what was you going to say?
And they made that into a separate spin-off game that they still support today.
Yep.
So that tells you a lot about, you know, the impact that I think The Witcher had on CD Projekt as a whole. If they're making these spin-off games, not necessarily specifically about The Witcher itself, but just the card game in and of itself.
Yeah, exactly. But so yeah, you know, that was The Witcher. So overall, I think we both kind of left, you know, that game with very, you know, positive feelings towards CD Projekt and their capabilities as a publisher. So, so that was The Witcher 3, and so let's move on to Cyberpunk, right? And let's fast forward to I guess like the start of 2020 or something, right? Mm-hmm. So we know that this is going to be a huge year, you know, 2020. We're expecting new consoles. We know that there's going to be some blockbuster video games coming this year, right? And you know, then the pandemic hits. But by that point, we're already sort of into 2020. You know, we're like 4 months in or whatever. And I believe some games had already dropped. I think the Resident Evil stuff was out by then. There was a
Final Fantasy. Yep.
Yeah, Final Fantasy, exactly. That came out too. I believe that was delayed as well. Wasn't it delayed like a month or something like that?
Yeah, it came out in April of this year.
Yeah. So yeah, like, you know, those games kind of set the tone for the rest of the year, because people were very happy with Final Fantasy, and that was a game we waited like 5 years for or something. So so the fact that we're waiting so long for these games and then they're turning out pretty good, like, it's like, yeah, like, you know, that kind of gets us even more hyped for what's to come. And we all know that Cyberpunk is coming this year, right? So I want to get into, before we get into the actual launch phase of Cyberpunk, right? I want to get to how the media was treating the game before any of this, you know? So it seemed to me, you know, like there was a lot of hit pieces on this game throughout the year. Some of them may have been warranted. Some of them I feel like weren't warranted. And yeah, it seemed like people just had a real problem with this game for whatever reason. I know a lot of it stems from, like, you know, political reasons and stuff like that. And I know that, you know, CD Projekt might have made a few jokes that it kind of went too far on Twitter or something like that. And then, you know, you have people nitpicking stuff from the game, taking screenshots of, like, you know, the transgender character, like, in the game and stuff like that. And, you know, people were just making a lot of, like, different narratives about the game and stuff, and you know, how CD Projekt, you know, views people like that, and people were basically trying to make the statement that they're, you know, over sexualizing people or whatever. So there was a lot of, like, different political hit pieces targeted at the game. And I remember at that point I was feeling like, you know, why do so many people have it out for this game? It's like people want it to fail. Like what's going on? Like, I don't understand, right? Because I didn't understand it at all. So yeah, I just wanted to paint that picture, just so everyone remembers, what was happening before this phase, because that's important to remember. But Rich, did you have any thoughts about how people were perceiving this game and all of the hit pieces and all the media spins on this game, all the media takes on this game before months before it came out? Like, what was your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I think it was definitely a lot of overhyping of this game. The thing is, that tells me that a lot of people that learned or they knew a little bit about this game, maybe they did not do all of their research on what this game actually was and what it was intended to be. I recall when I went to E3 last year, and we saw the game for the very first time in action, and I heard CD Projekt Red talk about that this is now going to be a first-person game. Right then and there, I knew personally this could be a flop, because the studio is known for the third-person stuff that they did with The Witcher. So I thought to myself, well, I don't really know if they can pull off the first-person stuff, because it's going to require a lot more attention to detail in certain areas. And when we talk about our experiences with the gameplay later, I will dive back into that. But based off of hearing that alone, I kind of prepared my expectations, because I understand as a studio sometimes you want to try to do something different. If you're known as a studio that creates the Witcher games, I can respect and understand and appreciate you wanting to try and do something different, because you don't want to be typecasted, so to speak, as just a studio that does that game. But at the same time, if you're going to approach a new idea, you have to understand that there are some risks that are going to be taken, and you have to be able to actually effectively pull that stuff off if you're going to do that, because if not, it's going to get criticized even more. So I think, obviously, being that people know about the Witcher series, they already had expectations for this game, that it was going to be amazing, groundbreaking. As I said before, The Witcher 3 is a very good game. We actually voted on that as our game of the year when we did our awards on the website several years ago. So it definitely was deserving of that award. But at the same time, now you're saying that this new game is now supposed to be revolutionary. Do you forget the fact that they have not done a first-person game before? And I think people really ignored all of that, and they just figured, well, it's still going to be amazing no matter what. And I think that, again, this is a lesson in people needing to really listen to all the details of the game, look at what they showed and what they didn't show, and that will tell you right then and there, maybe there should be a little bit of caution we have for the game. And one final point that I do want to make, and you may laugh when you hear this. I'm pretty sure some people will laugh when they hear this as well. I didn't really think about this until we started to learn more about the game, and then we started to learn about the delay. I didn't really think about this, but perhaps using the colors yellow and black was not a good decision, because that is associated with a caution sign to let people know, hey, caution, warning, 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 do not proceed. Anytime you've been to a crime scene, that is what you see. So that right there should have been a cautionary tale for everybody to be like, okay, maybe we need to wait to learn more about this game before we hype it up, before we buy it, so on and so forth.
Yeah. And, I although I agree that, clearly this game was way overhyped, right? Mm-hmm. I can also admit that I was one of the people hyping it. But whoa! But it's different, though, because the reason, my hype came from a genuine love of this theme overall, like the Cyberpunk theme. It came from other media that I've experienced, with the Cyberpunk setting, whether it be books or movies, like The Matrix, Blade Runner, and stuff like that, Terminator, just like yeah, go ahead.
And Deus Ex also, right? Deus Ex.
Yeah, exactly.
That's serious.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Deus Ex. That was another series that I loved. I don't want to say series because I haven't, completed all of the old ones from back in the day, but specifically Human Revolution and Mankind Divided, I rate those games very highly. So those games coming out also heightened my hype for this game. And, so my hype came from, what I had seen other creators do with this type of theme and setting, right?
Yeah.
And I also had faith in CD Projekt because of what they did with The Witcher, that they were going to do something special with it. So that's where my hype came from. But I feel like where the problem comes is all of the people who feed into the hype from everywhere else. Like sometimes people will just hop on the bandwagon, right? And that's where it creates a problem, because it just goes overboard. And then also all of those media hit pieces I mentioned before, I feel like that adds to the hype somewhat too, because it gets everybody talking about the game. It gets everybody's eyeballs on the game, whether their perspective on it is negative or positive, right? So that all of that is basically free marketing. Like whether, it's a negative hit piece or not, that's going to get people talking about the game and paying attention to it a lot more, by default. So I feel like the hype train really got out of hand for the game. I definitely agree with that. But my hype for it in particular came from, a different place, I feel like, than certain other people's. There are a lot of people like me too who just were generally excited for, this theme to come out from CD Projekt. So I will say that as well. And yeah, in terms of like the perspective of the game, like the first person thing, I would have, like, in hindsight now, I definitely would have preferred if they made this game third person, and just like they literally could have took the Witcher engine, right, and just reskinned it, wrote a new story and everything, and they could have had something super dope just from that, like just keep it in that third person kind of setting, right? But I wasn't, I wasn't like, initially I wasn't too upset that it was going to be first person, because I had enjoyed Deus Ex, and that game is first person. So I thought, you know what, Deus Ex was super immersive in first person. So I feel like, if that game got it right, then this one can too. So that was my feeling beforehand. But, in hindsight, my perspective on that has changed literally. But I'll speak more about that later. But I just wanted to mention that because you brought it up also. So let's get to October 2020, right? Let's fast forward a bit. So we're at the dawn of a new generation. Like all the hype is currently on the PS5 and the Xbox Series X at that time in October, right? So everybody's hyped. Like everybody's hyped for what's to come in the future. Everybody's thinking about the new generation and the possibilities. And then, people start remembering like, oh, Cyberpunk's coming out too. Like it's coming out real soon after the launch of the console. So that's going to be like probably the first real next gen game and everything. Right. Or that's what some people were saying, not everybody, because everybody was aware as well that it was supposed to come out for PS4 and Xbox One. But a lot of people were, starting to look at it as a next-gen game because we knew that there was a next-gen version coming also, right?
Yeah.
So that was the talk about October, right? And then it's announced out of nowhere that the game is going to be delayed for... I don't think it was a full month. It was like 3 weeks or something like that, right?
Yeah.
What was the original date? Was it November 17th or something?
I need to double check that actually. It got delayed multiple times, so that's why. It's hard to because the game was initially supposed to be out, I believe, in this spring. Spring 2020, but then it got pushed back to November, and then I said, okay, because everyone knew that now next-gen consoles are coming out, so surely this will come out. Yeah, I believe it was like around November 19th or so, because that was the same week that PlayStation had came out. Xbox came out a week prior to that. Okay. So it did get delayed back again after that, but no, continue.
Yeah. Yeah, so, by that point, it had already been delayed, a few times. And we've already been waiting for it for for like 7 years or something. So 7-8 years or whatever. So yeah, like that was a shocker to learn that the game was going to be delayed, and I think that was when if you wasn't already skeptical about the game, a lot of people's eyebrows started to shoot up at that point, right? Because we're so close to the apparent release, and then they say, nope, we need to delay this by a few weeks or so. And then it starts to come out as well that they want to fix certain things in the game.
So
yeah, go.
I don't want to cut you off. Let me just make a quick, so just to give everybody the full frame of, because I see the information now. So at E3 29, it was announced for a April 16th, 2020 release. Mm-hmm. Then it was delayed till September 17th. Then it was delayed to November 19th. And then it finally came out December 10th.
Wow. So, see, I completely forgot about the September delay, when it was.
Yeah, I forgot about that too.
So that's a whole nother layer right there. So, it got delayed like 3 times in 1 year. So yeah, that adds a whole nother layer to it. But yeah, like that's when my antennas started to really come out a little. With that last delay, because it's like it's such a short space of time. So I'm like, how much do they need to fix in that time? Like it started to raise a lot of questions, about the development of the game. Go ahead.
And I also would add that at this point, we knew that the game, they had already announced the game had gone gold. So I haven't necessarily heard of a game getting delayed after it has already gone gold. Although I believe Weapon X, our very good friend Weapon X, said that did happen with another game. So he'll have to correct me and let me know which game that was again. But that was just, it was bizarre to hear that, because they made such a big deal about the announcement that the game has gone gold. And then about a week or so later, that's when they announced, the game is going to be delayed once again to December. So that was a very weird way to handle that information. But yeah, I understand why your antennas went up, because too many delays, and then you're hearing all these reports about stuff. Because I believe it was also around this time, like you mentioned, we heard that the next-gen version of the game wasn't going to be released until 2021. We heard that with a couple of games. I know Avengers is another game where the next-gen update was not going to be available to 2021. So once I heard that, I kind of figured, well, maybe somebody should just wait till next year to release this game. And that's why I don't understand why that decision wasn't made. But, yeah, it's a lot of conflicting reports. It definitely will make someone cautious about the game. So...
Yeah, I'm gonna have a lot to say about that later. Because but so let's continue, right? Because then we're gonna get to the meat of this. So in November, I particularly had a rough month in November. A lot of like personal stuff happened or whatever. So by the end of that month, right, I remember thinking, you know what, like I need a really, really big distraction, from life right now. So I started to anticipate the game even more. I was like, yeah, Cyberpunk is coming out soon, so I can't wait to just lose myself in this game and just, forget about life and forget about 2020. And, so that was my feeling by the end of November. So I want to ask you, Rich, like, what was your feeling, in December? Because of course you had you got a new console and everything, but what was your feeling towards Cyberpunk, in November leading to December? Like, do you feel like your anticipation had gone up by that point, or was was it starting to decline, and was you focused on other things or something? Like, what was your mindset?
Well, just to provide some context to people, much like you, I've had a pretty interesting and challenging 2020. Up until that point, I had actually, I do want to give a shout out to Sony, because they did send us a review unit for PS5, and obviously I had spent a lot of time reviewing that console and a lot of the games that were on the console. So, and at the same time, I had just started a new job the same week that I got that console. So it was a little hard to try and get certain things done regarding the console, but I did make sure that I was able to review the console and, of course, Spider-Man Miles Morales as well. So at that point, you know, I had been playing a lot of games from October all the way up until the end of November, because there were still other games that were coming out, you know, on the console, and there was still stuff that I was reviewing, even stuff that I'm still writing about to this very day. But I was also working, so I didn't really have a lot of time to play a lot of games, only the stuff I needed to for review purposes. So, you know, when I knew that this game was coming out, and then I know December, and of course, you know, Christmas holiday coming up, I figure, oh, this is great, because this will be a nice little game. When I have time, I can play it, you know. But at the same time, I was definitely concerned about all the stuff that I saw regarding the game because of all those delays, because I think the response to the delays was just so, like, people were just so angry about the delays. And it's kind of like everyone, I think, in the back of their minds believed, you know, even though they said this game is coming out December 10th, they figured, well, maybe this game should get delayed again, because it sounds like they were unsure of releasing it in December. And yeah, so I definitely was still curious to check it out, because again, I'm familiar with CDPR. I did have some interest in the game. Like you mentioned, Deus Ex, I also was a fan of Deus Ex, so I figured, well, the game might not be perfect. Well, I knew it wasn't going to be perfect, because there's not really such a thing as a perfect video game. But I figured, okay, maybe I will still give it a chance, because then, you know, by the time we hit December, usually there aren't typically a lot of games that come out in December. So I figured, well, this is great. This is something that I can dive into, and I figured a lot of people were going to dive into it. So I still was looking forward to it, even though I was very cautious about what it could actually be. But yeah, that's how I felt going into it.
Yeah, and like, I also remember, you know, because you mentioned the delay again, I remember, although a lot of people were, you know, upset about that last delay, a lot of people were angry, but I also feel like the people who were like really serious about the game and about, you know, wanting it, I feel I saw a lot of those types of people saying stuff like, you know, take as long as you need, CD Projekt, just make the game perfect. You know, if you need to delay it again, just delay it and just get it right, so that, you know, when it comes out, it's you know, 100% like perfect or whatever, right? So I saw a lot of people, you know, with that mindset. So that's surprising that, you know, they still decided to, you know, release it in this state or whatever. But yeah, but because I feel like if they did say, you know what, we need more time, so we're going to move it to spring or whatever, you know, 2021, I feel like people still would have been understanding, even though a lot of people would have been angry, I'm not going to lie, but I feel like people would understand if CD Projekt communicated, you know, the issues and you know, why they need this extra time. I feel like a lot of people would have been accepting of that, especially with it being 2020 and how things have gone this year. You know, we know that it's particularly difficult to work right now. But go ahead.
I agree 100% with everything you just said, and I think that people definitely would have been understanding. I mean, there was a lot of games that were delayed, that was delayed from this year. Halo Infinite being the biggest game that Microsoft could want on their console, and the fact that they were able to launch the Xbox Series X without that console, I'm pretty sure they won't admit it, but that still was painful for them to do that, because there isn't really any significant game you need a Series X for right at this moment in time. You can go back and play backwards compatible games, and Gears Tactics is a great game. The new Gears of War 5 DLC that they just released this week is also great. But there's not really a lot on there right now which would justify why you need to have the Xbox Series X. So, but the fact that Microsoft can make a delay of their biggest game, and that CD Projekt Red couldn't delay this till next year, it really is disappointing. But I also want to add on this last point before I go back to you. The pandemic did impact everybody, and I'm also sure from a business standpoint, it also impacted CDPR as well. And my guess is that the shareholders they still said, well, we need to make some money this year, so this game needs to come out this year. It's not the devs, and I know that the devs, that there have been statements that have been said that no, that's not what, they weren't under any pressure to release it. But come on, man. The shareholders, I'm pretty sure the people that were invested so much into the company, they wanted to try and make some money this year because this is a game that was supposed to come out back in April. So instead of waiting until a year later to release it and releasing it this year, they decide, well, it must come out in December, come hell or high water. But again, I go back to say, when they announced that the updates for the game for next-gen console wasn't coming until 2021, that should have been a clear sign that, well, perhaps you don't want to buy this on PS5 or Xbox Series X until 2021, which I might add is also the year that you should have considered buying a PS5 and Series X, because it's very hard to get either console right now. The scalpers have taken over, so it's hard to get a console right now on either platform. So it definitely would have made more sense for this to come out next year because they needed more time. And again, with the pandemic and having to change their work structure, it would have been understood because a lot of other devs delayed their games for the exact same reason. So, yeah, should have did that.
Facts. So it was 100% greed. The decision to make it release this year. It was 100% greed from shareholders and executives, and it's really blowing up in their faces now, and that's what they deserve, really. But we'll get more into that because I have more things to say. I have more things to say about the internal structure of CDPR later on. We'll get back to that. So let's get right ahead to the release of the game, right? Like the release week, in fact, because it felt like a week-long event. So the first, I think the first rumblings of this being, a messy release was the review structure, right? Like, and I mean, particularly like who was issued a review and how close it was to the game and things of that nature, right? So, Rich, because I wasn't paying 100% attention around this time, but I was seeing secondhand everything that was happening, once I had the time to look at it, right? So I'm going to ask you specifically, like, who exactly got access to the game, early to review it before release?
So there was a handful of sites, and there was some content creators that did get early code. But the issue in all of this is, obviously, this is when there were going to be some issues. Now, let me go back to this real quickly. Before I get into that, Projekt Red, they did release Cyberpunk 2077 gameplay videos where they showed you the game running on PS4, PS5, Xbox One, Xbox Series X, etc. But and even when I looked at those videos, when I saw it on PS4 and Xbox One, you can clearly see there is a difference between how it looks on PC, how it looks on next gen, and how it looks on regular consoles. Now, I was already cautious once I saw that, but I think a lot of people might have missed that information because the way they presented the videos was in a side-by-side comparison. It's not like you're just watching one video and it's showing just the PS4 version or just the PS5 version. So I could understand how that could be confusing for some. Now, to go back to what you said about the review structure, everybody wasn't sent the game, but what was also interesting is that they were only sent PC copies of the game. So, and then they weren't sending out any console copies at all. And the review embargo, I believe, was on Monday, the exact same week before the game was set to come out. So anyone that got a website such as IGN or other people, so on and so forth, that's what they got. One thing I will say, and I give full credit to this guy, there's a YouTube content creator called SkillUp. He always does these reviews on a lot of the biggest games. He was the one that had went on Twitter and mentioned all of this stuff that I'm saying about the fact that they only allowed people to get PC copies. They wouldn't give them console copies. But he also added a very important detail, which he said that They would not allow anyone that got the game early to stream their own gameplay. They had to use B-roll footage.
Yep.
So all of this stuff, very concerning, because anyone that gets a game early and you're able to record a video, you have the right to use that footage any way you want to, but they're saying you can't use that footage until, another time. We want you to use B-roll for now. So all of that is, in my opinion, a very unprecedented move, and it is to cover up something, because obviously there's some issues with the game graphically and beyond that with bugs, so on and so forth, that they don't want people to see. Because I know, and I can also say this as well, oftentimes when we have gone to preview events in the past, and if we're recording gameplay, they would tell you to omit any bugs that you see in the gameplay, because again, that's a first impression someone has of the game. So I understand from a PR perspective why they would tell someone not to show footage, but at the same time, if you are confident in this game has a review embargo that lifts days before the game comes out, you should be confident enough for people to show their footage. So that right there definitely was a red flag in terms of what to expect from the console version. But the problem is that a lot of people didn't really there wasn't really any transparency about this stuff. There wasn't really a dialogue for them to really further talk about what they're doing with the console version. So that was what the problem was, because if you have a clear communication with your audience, then I think they would be understanding if the game had to be delayed. But they were not clear from the very beginning with all of this.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And that was, I think that was like the first thing I properly registered in my mind of CD Projekt doing something wrong. Because, I remember back in the day, not back in the day, I sound really old, but a few years ago or so, when we used to record the co-op and stuff, we were always singing the praises of CDPR, saying that they're for the people and everything, they're for the gamers, and they actually were. Back then, they really were. They put consumers first, always, right? Mm-hmm. But now, when I'm seeing this happen with the the whole reviews and them trying to dictate what's allowed in the reviews and stuff, that to me is EA behavior, EA Activision, and I really despise those companies now after what they've done, after the practices that they've been happening, the stuff they've been doing in the past few years. I really view them in a negative light now, so when I see CD Projekt doing that, I'm like, wow, is this the same company? What happened? Did EA buy out CDPR or something? So yeah, I was like, wow, I couldn't believe what was happening. And then, we start to see scores pop up. And at first I'm seeing good scores. So yeah, I'm like, okay, so everyone must be, everyone who's doubting the game and saying there's problems must be crazy, because these reviews, they seem mostly positive. And then I think I can't remember when exactly it was when I started to hear about all of the problems. I think it must have been the day before, or a couple days before release. I start hearing people saying that it's really bad. Oh yeah, yep. That's what it was. People were playing the game, and I believe it was before the day one patch or something as well. Yep. So I was like, okay, yeah, I mean, that's the whole reason they delayed the game, so that they could, fix it with the day one patch. And although I'm not a fan of that practice, because, a lot of other companies do it, I feel like if you sell something and if I buy something, the game should be, functional day one. When I receive the product, it should be functional. You shouldn't have to rely on a day one patch to fix everything. So I don't like when publishers do that. But, my mindset was, when I started to see all that negativity and how broken the game was, I was like, okay, well, day one, it's going to be fixed. Because that's why they delayed it, so they could work on that patch to fix everything, right? So that was my mindset at that point, right? So is there anything else you wanted to add before we get to December 10th?
Well, yeah, the only thing I want to add is when you talked about the review scores being positive, once again, this is a whole thing about the transparency. You need to be more transparent about this. Now, a lot of the reviews that I saw, the reviewers said in the actual review that the game was provided on PC, and even Metacritic was listing that this is what the game was scored on PC. But the problem is that, and this is why I'm glad we don't have review scores anymore for our website. I think people will see the review score and they will assume, well, this score is universal to all versions of the game, and it obviously means it's a great game. If it's getting 97s, 90, etc., 87, whatever, that means it's an excellent game. But again, people look at the score and they don't read the review. So I'm sure a lot of people who purchased this game, either they had already pre-ordered it on PS4 or Xbox One, or they saw the review and then they said, okay, well, now this score must mean that the console versions are the exact same, so let me go ahead and purchase it. That's why I have an issue with that, because if they had provided the code on console, people would have known already, okay, the console version is bad and the the PC version is where it's at. And we already know that CDPR, this is a company that they specialize in making stuff primarily for PC. So that obviously should have been their priority, to just make this game come out on PC. If they needed to release it December 10th, make it only be the PC version, and then release the other versions next year when you've had a lot more time to actually work on this stuff. But I think, again, people saw those scores. They said, oh, well, it still is a great game. It's amazing, so I'm just going to get this game. But honestly, they have to be transparent in looking at this information and doing all the proper research before deciding that this is a game they must have. And again, for those that pre-ordered it early, I do feel bad for them, because they were going in with the anticipation that this game was going to be amazing because they've enjoyed The Witcher 3, The Witcher 2, etc. But again, you really have to do your research before you decide to pre-order anything, regardless of the studio. And I had a conversation about this the other day, because Grand Theft Auto 6, we know when Rockstar announces Grand Theft Auto 6, I'm pretty sure as soon as they announce the pre-orders, a lot of people are going to pre-order it, because they know Rockstar Games and their pedigree for the types of the games that they usually make. But I do think people need to always be cautious and use this as a perfect example to do all the research you need to do before you pick up these games. Because, again, I don't think that the studio is always going to tell you and be straight with you about what to expect from the game on certain consoles. But I mean, and this is just a particular case where it was going to be an issue. And when they kept delaying it, and then they kept telling you in the delay, well, we need to delay it because we need to get it right for the current gen consoles and so on and so forth, that should be a red flag. You should be concerned about this stuff. But again, unfortunately, it is what it is with the score stuff, and people saw that and they said, okay, it must be great. But as we learned later, that was not the case on consoles.
Yeah, and that's definitely disappointing. So let's get right to it, right? So the game releases December 10th, and my experience with it at first, because I played it actually that first night. I played like an hour or something, and see, the thing is with me, like around that time, I was actually I'd actually bought parts to rebuild my PC. So when I started playing it, I was playing on my old PC build, which is an i5 and 1080 and 16 gigabytes of RAM or whatever. And when I played it on that, it was actually like running fine. I was playing at like mostly medium. Some settings were high, because it's an i5. So, and it was fine. Like I was enjoying it. I was getting immersed. And, I was happy. I was mostly happy with it. And then, like a couple of days later, I rebuilt my PC. So now I have an AMD. 6700. And I still have 1080 because right now there's a problem with GPUs. Like it's hard to find one. But the 1080 actually works fine with this game. Like it runs really well, especially combined with that new CPU. It runs amazing. So I even turned up the graphics to, I did a mix of high and ultra settings, right? And it's, and it continued to run great after that. So I was satisfied, right? But I'm not going to get there yet, but I did notice problems, with the core game itself and the gameplay. But before I get to that, right, I'm paying close attention to everything happening on Twitter and social media and also Reddit. And that's where I'm really seeing all of the problems with the games, particularly on the consoles, on the PS4 and the Xbox One. And as I understand it, Rich, and you can confirm this, whether I'm right or wrong, but as I understand it, so like if you play this game now on the PS5 or the Xbox One, you're actually playing the PS4 and Xbox One version from last gen, but it performs better still on the PS5 because you are on a next gen console, but it's still broken as well. So is that pretty much accurate?
So that's 100% accurate. I will go ahead and say full disclosure. I did receive a PS4 code of the game. So and obviously I'm playing on PS5. So I absolutely agree with everything you said. You are playing the PS4 version, and yes, it still has issues. One of the biggest problems that I have encountered is that when I installed the game from day one, that day one patch was about, I believe, almost 45, 50 gigabytes. So once I had downloaded the game, you're talking about a game that's over 101 gigabytes of storage space. We already know there's not a lot of storage space on the PS5, so that already was an issue. But then, as of this recording, because we are recording this on a Saturday, last night they released another hot fix. That you're able to download again. And from what I saw, I needed 54 gigabytes of additional space just to download that file on PS5. So clearly it's a lot with the updates and stuff. And again, this is only one of the fixes because there's going to be many more fixes coming. So it tells you right there, when you have to download all of this stuff, it's certainly an issue. But in terms of what you said, with the initial statement of it still has issues on PS5, 100% accurate.
Okay, yeah. So basically, the console versions of the game were completely broken and a mess, and it was handled very poorly. Now, if you play it on a PS5 and Xbox, you have a better experience than people playing on Xbox One and PS4, but it's still broken. And I mean, the game itself has a lot of core problems anyway, no matter what platform you're playing it on. So, that's pretty much the deal with the game. And of course, the gaming, the gamers like worldwide just exploded. Like all the conversations online and everything, like it's been so crazy over the past couple weeks, right? Like people are outraged. There's a very small select few people who are still defending the game and saying that it's good. I mean, some people were saying just be patient. I understand that it's broken at the moment, but I'm patient and I'm gonna wait till it's fixed and things of that. And people were saying many different things like that, right? But largely, I think a lot of people can agree that this is a mess, and this looks very bad on CD Projekt's behalf. Just how it was handled, with the launch, the reviews, and everything, and then just their response afterwards. So, let's get to Okay, so first of all, Rich, let me ask you this first. How do you feel about the response to the game, like itself, and how people are responding to what we got in Cyberpunk 2077?
Well, let me start by saying I feel very bad for the people that bought this on PS4 or Xbox One, because clearly there need to be more communication with CD Projekt Red, and if they felt that those versions were not ready, They should have just decided to push that back further. Again, the PC, if they only wanted to focus on PC for now, I think that'll be totally fine. But because they decide to try to focus on all the other platforms, knowing that these platforms did not perform properly, that right there makes them look like they made a horrible decision and a very bad decision. Now, in terms of the game itself, we're going to get into our own experience with the game in a little while, but I will just say I think a lot of people, as we mentioned earlier, they were very overhyped for this game. And as you started to play the game, you would see right away that there really should not have been so much hype for the game. I'm not saying the game is horrible, and I think that because people are having issues with the game on PS4 and Xbox One, they will lead a lot of people to believe the game is complete garbage. It's not complete garbage. You can see the potential in what the devs were trying to do with the game, but clearly it's a game that needed some more time in the oven. And that's what I think the issue is here, whether it's the bugs, whether it's the fact that when you play it on console, you can clearly see the graphics are not quite as good, and they could have used more polish and refining, stuff like that. But again, a lot of that could have been worked out if they would have just delayed it further until, April of 2021, and that probably would have solved a lot of issues. Not every issue, but it would have definitely solved in terms of how it looked and how it performed. It would have helped in those regards. But yeah, I mean, overall, I think the response to the situation has been horrible by CD Projekt Red, and I'm pretty sure you're about to get into that momentarily. But I just think that in terms of the game and what we got from the finished product, I'm certainly disappointed. And I think that the whole problem that you now present yourself as a company is to release an update later. What guarantees you that people are actually going to want to check this out next year now? Because there's going to be other games that are going to be out that I'm sure that may have their attention. So it's a very risky situation that they have put themselves in, and they also give themselves a bad reputation at the same time.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. So yeah, I'm gonna touch on that as well. But so like my view of how people responded, like gamers and stuff, I feel like once I started to like pay attention and see the problems on the consoles and everything, and what people were saying on Reddit and Twitter, I started to realize, CD Projekt was wrong, and people have every right to be outraged if they bought this game, with expectations, and the fact that also CD Projekt did kind of, embellish a little with what we were gonna get in this game. So because of that, I was like, okay, yeah, so people have the right to be mad here. I understand, but do you also feel like a lot of people were also going overboard as well? Or do you feel like it was 100% warranted?
Well, yes. To go to what you said earlier about the people being overhyped, and, obviously when you see something has a lot of hype and attention, you're going to jump on the bandwagon. I definitely think that there are a lot of people that jumped on the bandwagon to hate this game because they already had an agenda with CD Projekt Red. The fact that people had acted as if they were a perfect company when really there is no company that is perfect. Every company has done wrong for the sake of their business. That has happened in every industry. So we can't pretend like CD Projekt Red is a darling company that always does everything right. But I do also add that some of the people that were hating, it is popular to hate as well. Because anytime we have seen with social media over the years, especially with Twitter and all these other platforms, if you dislike a person, if they make a comment or whatever, and you dislike them, now it becomes popular to cancel that person out. So I do think that cancel culture also played a role into this. And I'm saying CD Projekt Red definitely deserves criticism for how they have handled the situation. But for the people to just outright hate the company, they haven't played any of the games, but they want to hate the company because they have a friend or someone else they know that hates the company, those people are a little overboard with the decision to just hate something just because, with no understanding as to why you dislike what they did in the first place. Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. Overboard to an extent.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I see a mix. Like sometimes I think people are doing too much with the hate. Like it's like they're just going on and on and on, and I'm like, don't you have anything else to do today? Like like some people some people are in media, so I understand why it's such a big discussion among like our peers and stuff like that. Like there's a genuine reason for those people to talk about it and stuff, but there's also there's also like other people who are just like, I feel like they're just using it to, like you said, just like spread negativity. And because I guess because this has been such a troubling year and a lot of people have more time on their hands, so they're using that time to just be negative about anything and just like harp on a situation like this.
See, I agree with that 100%. But I also will add, though, that for the people that are legit angry and they understand the situation, I think they have the full right to be angry, because if they spent over $200 to have that collector's edition of this game and this is what you got as a result, you should be angry. And on the flip side of that as well, they have a right to be angry because, from a business standpoint with CD Projekt Red, releasing a game like this during December in a season where there aren't really any other major releases this month, all eyes are going to be on your product. So to release the product in the current state that it's in, knowing that you're going to have all eyes on it, that it just doesn't make any kind of sense, especially if the console versions are not ready. It again goes to what you said about having some greed and wanting to just get this out, thinking about money, not thinking about the end product. So I think anyone that's angry from that perspective, they are 120% justified, because if they spent their hard-earned money on this and this is what they got as a return product, they should complain, because I feel like if you don't complain about this stuff, it will give other companies the impression that you're okay with this type of product. And one thing that I know we said multiple times on the co-op, it feels like this generation, there have been some games that companies will release, and clearly the game is not finished. They're still releasing content for it. Take, for example, Anthem, a game that I know you was hyped for. When they released it, it was another disappointing game because there was hardly any content in there, and because EA decided that we're going to make this games as a service, and yet we have no content to keep it going. So I understand why people are angry for sure, but I also understand that, if the one thing that 2020 should have taught us is that there is a hell of a lot more to life than just video games. We play video games as a form of escape. So I understand you want to play a great game and not be distracted by what's going on in the real world. But yes, it's okay to be angry, but just maybe not be going to no extreme of, well, I want the devs to pay for this, or I want the devs to die, because we've seen that what happened with Last of Us, because they wasn't happy with the direction of the game. They were sending death threats to the actress, so on and so forth. All of that stuff, that's when you take it too far. It's okay to be angry, but just know your limits for being angry, and definitely don't go overboard with it, because, again, there's other things that are more important to life than just a video game, in my opinion.
Yeah, and there you go. You said it exactly, what I'm talking about. Like those people who just take it too far and just like they're just out for blood. Like I feel like that's when it just goes too far. Like, if you're upset with the game and you bought it, get your refund, and you can complain about it. You can discuss it with other, unhappy people too. You have every right to do that. But when people are just going on and on and on and are out for blood and just want to rip, the company apart or whatever. And, it's like, it's just, you're doing too much. There's better ways to go about this, like more productive ways.
Exactly.
It's a very messy thing, right? So let's get to CD Projekt's response first of all. So I'm not going to read the whole thing because it's quite lengthy, but but I kind of I don't know if they changed it actually, because the one I have here I think I remember it being a bit different initially.
They had a couple of responses since that first response. Oh. They had a lot of responses they've been releasing all over their Twitter since that first one. Yep.
Okay. Well, yeah, like I remember it just being like there was a line in there that was like, if you can't wait for the updates, then you feel free to get a refund. And it just felt like wow, like you're being sassy at a time like this, like because you and I are writers, Rich, so we know like somebody purposely put that line in there, like somebody's mentality was like, man, I can't be bothered to deal with these stupid customers. So like as they were writing, that just came out, like, you know, it was like, like you can tell they were just like they meant to be sassy in that moment, like when they wrote the line. So I was shocked just to see that, you know, they had the balls to you know, write it in that tone, because they should have been like 100% apologetic, and you know, they should have been sympathizing with the customers and everything, especially like, and the CD Projekt, I remember they would have been like that, you know, they would have been 100% like apologetic and for the people. So the fact that, you know, it came across in that tone shocked me, and I was like, wow, like they're really, you know, they're really being bold right now. So
and let me add one more thing on to what you said. That's the statement that got you. The statement that got me was them starting off by saying they wanted to apologize for not showing the game on base last gen consoles. Because again, as I mentioned earlier, with the review process, they were very specific to tell people we're only giving you console code. I'm going to say PC codes. You will not be able to get a console code. So they damn well knew before they released the statement what the situation was. And they was banking off the fact that everyone would see the good scores that got on PC, assume that the same applies to consoles, and they would still purchase the game. So that right there, they definitely got to be called out for.
Yeah. And I really think that, like, it was probably like the management or whatever. Like, I really think the management had the mindset of, okay, this game is a bit broken, but if Skyrim exists, then people will still be happy. And and that's a very bad mindset to have.
Or Fallout 76, the other game that released and was very controversial. It was not well received because it was not what people wanted it to be.
Yeah, see, with Fallout 76, though, I feel like they got the backlash. Like, they got the outrage that, you know, the game probably deserved in that case. But Skyrim, it's like, there wasn't, like, a huge outrage for Skyrim, but people like, are aware that it you know, is sort of, like, broken or whatever. And even some of the older Fallout games, like, they have bugs and stuff, but people just accepted it, like, almost. But, and I feel like, you know, CD Projekt were expecting that, and also like they probably also had the mindset of, yeah, we'll fix this later because, you know, No Man's Sky fixed the game, so, you know.
Yep, exactly. And see, that right there goes to what was said earlier about, you know, releasing a game in its current state and trying to fix it later with patches and updates and all this other stuff when anyone could just initially take more time to release a finished product, and there will be a lot less of issues. Now, you will probably still have to do patch updates for how certain stuff performs, but you shouldn't be talking about massive content updates where the update is like 50 gigabytes of additional stuff that got to be fixed. That means the game is not finished.
Yeah, exactly. So CD Projekt, they announced that, you know, they're going to allow people to get refunds no matter what. And, you know, if they're having trouble getting a refund from the place they purchased it from, then they could come to them directly for a refund or whatever, right? So that happens. And then, but people are still very unhappy. And I saw a lot of, like, hilarious responses to the tweets that CD Projekt put out. And then it escalates even more to the point where Sony just decides to take down the game from the store. So at that point, I was like, wow, like, this is a PR disaster for CD Projekt right now. But
and you know what was also misleading about that is that when they said in that initial statement that you can get your refund with Xbox and PlayStation, at that point, they hadn't had a conversation with PlayStation and Xbox about this stuff. Maybe Xbox, since Xbox has a marketing deal with them for this particular game, but they clearly did not have a conversation with PlayStation, because PlayStation was not honoring every request for a refund, and neither was Xbox. So they came to this decision and said, well, we're going to go ahead and tell the people what is happening, and then we'll go and talk to Sony and Microsoft on the back end about this stuff after the fact. That's why I believe Sony just decided to delist the game on PSN, because there wasn't a conversation. And then later on, after that happened, like within the same time frame of that happening, I guess like an hour or two later, then they released another statement and say, we have had a conversation with Sony, and we will work on getting the game back on PSN in the immediate future. So you see, that conversation didn't happen when they released that first statement. It hadn't happened at that point. This is why people definitely should be angry, because you're basically telling the consumer, oh, I did this, but I didn't do it yet. So, yeah, all of this is cause for concern and worry, rightfully so.
Yeah. And like, just take what you just said, right, and imagine how that played into the development of the game, because I'm sure it was exactly like that, where CD Projekt was, they were showing all these wonderful parts of the game and all these features in the game that didn't exist. And then because I've been reading like Reddit and stuff extensively, and if you read enough threads in the Cyberpunk Reddit, right, you're gonna pick up a lot of different tidbits from the developers themselves. There was actually one developer who posted like a comment that I believe Jason Schreier covered it already, or something. But yeah, like, so basically they spent like 5 years or something hyping this game and talking about all the features and all the bells and whistles that are going to be in the game. And then, the management at CDPR, they finally actually decided to start allocating time and money to developing the game 2 years before it came out. So although they had like 7 to 8 years or whatever, they only started, really developing the game like a couple of years ago or something.
I'm glad you pointed that out, because I've seen some reaction videos that people have been making, and everyone is acting like this game was in development from 2012. When the development didn't start until, as you said, 2 years, when they had started working on this stuff 2 years ago. So I think people need to hear that, because all they hear is that, well, it got announced back in 2012, so surely it's been in development all this time. These people do not understand how game development works, because you come up with the idea, the writing, all that other stuff, it takes time. So it wasn't in development that long. But they need to definitely understand that, because I think people just assume, since it was announced back then, it was already in development, and that's not what the case was at all.
Yeah, and like one of the developers also said, there's not too much information from developers yet because they were under NDA. So this particular developer that said all this stuff was very like ballsy to do that. But they were saying like damn, what was I about to say?
Sorry.
No, it's cool. No, it wasn't you. It's me. My brain is like mush these days. But yeah, like, so they were saying they knew, like, because based on what happened with The Witcher 3, because apparently there was a lot of crunch that happened with that game, right? So the developers were already dreading the crunch that they would have to do for Cyberpunk. So a lot of them were actively trying to talk to the managers to, start the project earlier than it did, so that, there wouldn't be such a crunch, and that they'd have time to work out all the kinks and all the issues and everything, and implement all the features that they're asking for. But the managers were kind of just... it seems like the way they described it, it's like the managers were basically just there to kind of like accept praise from fans, and then also like just get, bonuses and get their salary. And they didn't care so much about, the development itself.
That's the problem.
They just saw the developers as like, they're just there to make things happen when it needs to happen, kind of thing. So,
So
it seems like there was a huge disconnect between management and the developers themselves, which is a very bad working environment.
When you get into some of the other thoughts later on, I definitely am going to think about how I think CD Projekt Red needs to repair themselves. But that right there, with the disconnect of the developer and the actual management people in charge, that right there shows you that dynamic and the issues with that dynamic, because all they are concerned about is the bottom line. They don't care about the time, blood, sweat, and tears that the devs actually put into the game. They just care about the end product and how much money am I going to make off of this. And those people, in my personal opinion, I don't care how powerful they are, they need to restructure that and remove those people from the company ASAP. Because you need to have people who actually care about the game. It's okay to take praise from a job well done, but you should care about the process to get there and what the gamer cares about, what the consumer cares about, because they're the ones that are spending their hard-earned money. And I'm pretty sure that times are going to be a little bit more challenging for everybody given what's happening now. So if anyone is spending $60, $70 on a game, they should be able to get quality out of that. So those people who are in power, they definitely should pay the price in some way for this. And I'm not talking about just losing money, because if they didn't care about the devs, they definitely should not be the ones running the show right now over there. But that's just my personal opinion.
Yeah, I definitely feel like there needs to be a shake up now after this, like, because that's ridiculous, and I feel bad for the developers, and just from my own work experiences where it was sort of like that, like, yeah, like that's a bad situation to be in if you're a developer. So I feel for those people who had to
absolutely
go through that, and the sad part of it is that a lot of customers are taking out on developers too.
Yep.
And it's not really their fault. It's really the management. So
I will say this. I hope that the one thing that people will gain from this experience is they have to hold the people in power at these companies accountable for this stuff. The devs should not be the ones that people are complaining to about, because obviously they were paid to do a job. I'm pretty sure they knew as all this happened that the game was not going to turn out the way that it was supposed to turn out. They knew about this ahead of time. I don't buy the excuse of the statement that says that, we did not anticipate that there was going to be issues with the console. No, I'm sure the devs knew, but the people in power didn't give a damn and said, we want our money, so this is why this is their statement. This is what we're going to tell people when they ask what's wrong with the game. So I do feel bad for the devs getting blamed, though, because clearly they were paid to do a job, and they were probably still doing that job before they decided, no, we need to go ahead and get this game out now. So it doesn't matter how polished this game is. You'll have to make up them hours later in crunch. And now the problem with that is, as you mentioned earlier with crunch, now they're going to be scrambling to try and get these fixes done over the next couple of months, well into next year. So it's not fair to the devs at all, and they need to definitely change this process moving forward.
Yeah, and I also want to clear up something else real quick before we move on to our own experience, right? So, remember there was that Jason Schreier story that blew up as well about this game having crunch and them having a discussion with the team or whatever and them mutually agreeing that they were going to do overtime to finish the game and everything like that. So when that story came out and blew up, a lot of us weren't happy with Jason Schreier's approach to that, because from that information that we had, it seemed like this was an internal discussion with the whole company or the team or whatever, and they all agreed that that's what they wanted to do. And in that case, I don't see a problem with it. If the workers are passionate about the project, and if they are being paid appropriately, first of all, and they agree that that's what they want to do, then to me that should be allowed, because overtime has been it's a thing in jobs. overtime is an actual thing. So as long as it's paid overtime, I don't have a problem with that, right? But now, after what I've been reading on Reddit and what the developers said and everything, they're saying that the managers never had that conversation with the dev team. And
Wow.
it was just decided that, they were going to crunch and do overtime. So basically, the dev on Reddit or whatever is saying that CD Projekt lied about that. Like the managers, the executives, whatever, they lied. And
Wow.
instead they just kind of forced the overtime to happen, and they never had a discussion. So in that case, I do want to say that, I don't agree with that. I feel like that's terrible that they did that.
Yeah.
And lied about it. Like, that's the worst thing as well. And that just goes to show, that's a testament to everything else that's happening right now. The fact that they lied so boldly about that.
There 100% needs to be some repercussions for those that lied behind all of this, because that's just absolutely ridiculous. And the management, obviously, like I said, they're concerned about the bottom line. They want to get their money, so they will lie, deceive, do whatever they can to make sure they get their money out of all of this. And that's unfortunate that you have people like that in this position of power. But again, there's a lot of companies that have these same individuals. We've seen it in multiple industries. So this is not really just about video games at this point. It's about every industry. There are some people in power that have this mindset. And that's why I said, if CD Projekt Red wants to save face after this, obviously there's a lot of repairing that has to be done. But if they want to save face after all of this, they're going to definitely have to take a step back, get rid of the people who caused issues within this entire process. And it starts at the very top. They have to be willing to do that, because if they have this mindset for a game like this, then when CD Projekt Red does actually release another game, like the inevitable next entry in the Witcher series, which I believe is going to definitely happen now, those people shouldn't be allowed or be able to get any rewards from that, because they're the ones that were part of this process ending up the way it did. So I don't know, but something has to be done internally after this, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Like, that's just horrible behavior from them. So let's get into now our personal experience with the game and, our personal thoughts of it. So taking everything away, let's just focus on what we think of the game, personally, right? So, and I'll go first here. So, as I said, my first few hours with the game, I really enjoyed it. Like, it was super immersive for me, especially the story, the writing, and everything. Like, I felt like I was really V. And I'll just go ahead and say that all of Act 1, the prologue, like, all of that was just super impressive to me. Like, I was 100% sold playing Act 1, the prologue, right? Mm-hmm. When I got to Act 2, though, that's when I really... that's when I really, really started to see the problems with the game. And some of these problems are... it's like, Night City looks gorgeous. Design-wise, it's beautiful. I love, like, the lighting and, just the buildings and the layout and everything. Like, it's really nice looking, especially, if you're able to play on high or ultra settings or whatever. Like, it's beautiful, right? But it's also very shallow. Like, it doesn't feel like a lot is actually happening if you look hard enough, right? And I think a lot of the problem comes from the NPCs and the AI and how it's programmed and everything. Like the NPCs, they are kind of window dressing a little bit. Like, you see a lot of NPCs walking around and stuff. Yeah. But it doesn't feel like a GTA or a Skyrim where, these NPCs have a life, like they're following a particular life pattern. It just seems like they're just there and they're not doing that much. There are a lot of like scripted NPCs, of course, that are tied into the story or into V's experience or whatever. So every now and then you'll come across an NPC that actually means something to the game. So they have particular scripting, and they might act more lifelike because they're scripted to be that way. But the random NPCs you just see around, it's like there's not that much to them besides the aesthetic. If you play a game like, if you played enough open world games like, GTA, Assassin's Creed, well, actually Assassin's Creed isn't the best example, but like GTA, Skyrim, what are some other amazing, let's just use those. Red Dead Redemption, that's another one.
Yep.
So in these games, right, when you see NPCs, they're scripted to live their life. Like they're actually living, it feels like they're living. Like they wake up, they go outside, they go to work, do their job, come back home or whatever, whatever it is their life pattern is, right? But in this game, CD Projekt is just, they don't do anything. Like they're just standing there. They're just, and sometimes like they're just, even when you try to talk to them, because it gives you the option to talk, they don't say anything really. Like it's just like, oh, what do you want? Or what are you looking at? Like it just doesn't feel engaging at all. And then when you combine that with stuff like the driving, right? Now, obviously, the driving controls as well. That's another problem that the cars control very badly. But I was willing to overlook that though, because this isn't a car game. So I just looked at it as this is just something extra that's there to get you from A to B faster. This isn't a car game, so I don't mind too much. I was willing to overlook that, right? But the problem comes in with the other drivers and their responses to your actions, because it's like if you knock into another car, if you crash or whatever another car, the stuff that they say, it doesn't fit what somebody would say if they were in an accident. Like sometimes they're just like I'm pretty sure I hit a car before, and the person inside the car was just like, "What are you looking at?" or something. Like, and it's like, so I like slam into your car, damage your vehicle, and you say, "What are you looking at?" Like, it's like the drivers are scripted just like the NPCs you find on the sidewalk. Like, it's like they're all the same. Like, the drivers don't have specific programming. It's just they're in a car and the car just goes forward, and that's it. And it's like, also, if you go in front of a vehicle and just stop or something, they just stop and sit there. Like, they don't beat the horn. They don't they don't try to go around you. It's just everything stops, and then even if you move again after that, sometimes they're just still there, stopped. Like, it just feels like they're not really alive. They're not really, it's all shallow, and it's just all there to give you a certain look, a certain feel. Mm-hmm. But it's just it just doesn't feel like it's a real thing. Whereas in GTA, and I've played GTA 5 recently, it's like just everything just feels real. Everything is programmed to be real. And yeah, so I started to notice that quickly about Cyberpunk, right? But the thing is with this game, the story is the main attraction. And so it's good that at least the story is good. And I definitely recommend everybody do the side quests. And that's an unfortunate thing with the reviews, because a lot of people didn't have time to do all the side quests. But with the story structure, it feels like they took stuff out of the main story and made some of them side missions too, because a lot of the side missions tie into the main story as well. So I recommend everybody, do the side quests if you want to get the most out of it. But I do also have some problems with the story too. Like there are some pretty immersion breaking things that happen in the story, and some of it is just how V reacts to certain things. Sometimes it doesn't feel like you're really representing this character, because sometimes I don't know, like the responses just aren't always that good. Like it's like
Yep.
Like the text you can choose, the dialogue options you choose, like they aren't always great in my opinion. They could be a lot better. And sometimes it feels like you have no control over how V is acting, like, and and sometimes V just comes across as like just a horrible person, like, or just just not good. Like, at least in a game like Mass Effect, you have the option of being more of like a good, righteous person, or you could be a straight up asshole if you want. But with V, it's just like you're just an asshole. What was you gonna say?
That's a perfect explanation, because I'll give a good example. Let's go to the whole heist. At the end of the heist, when you're on the elevator with Jackie, and obviously he's taken some shots, and you're having that dialogue back and forth with him about what happened. It's like, even though you're saying, well, maybe Bug is to blame for this, it still comes off as you blaming Jackie for it, based off of his responses. He's like, well, wait a minute, man. What are you doing? I'm doing my best here, trying to hold on. It's like, it does not feel like, you're 100% right when you say, when you have the dialogue conversation, it doesn't feel like you're saying anything positive or negative. It's just whatever the option is. And if, as someone who has played games like Mass Effect, where you're impacting, where what you say is impactful, it doesn't feel the same way in certain conversations.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that just kind of takes you out of the experience sometimes, like where you can't react the way you want to. And they marketed this as a role-playing game, and in a role-playing game, you're supposed to really have control over your decisions and the things you say and stuff like that, like and I just don't feel like that in this, like, because I look at Mass Effect as the standard of doing that, because they did it, like, they really nailed it in the first 3 games. Go ahead.
But by the way, I just want to let you know, you said that it's marketed as a role-playing game. I'm not sure if you are aware of this, but they have now, they changed it, and now it's an open-world action-adventure story.
Yeah.
So yeah, they changed that.
Yeah.
That happened recently, very recently.
Yeah, that's interesting, and yeah, I'm gonna get to that as well, because I have problems with that too. But yeah, like, that just takes me out of it, because that was the biggest part of my expectations for this. Like, yes, I'm gonna get to be V essentially, and I'm gonna get to navigate this world how I want to do it, kind of thing. And it just falls flat. It doesn't really work. And also, like, obviously I haven't beat the game yet, but it feels like a lot of the decisions you make don't have a lot of weight either.
Yep.
And I'm also hearing from other people that your decisions don't really matter in the grand scheme of things. And this was something that they hyped up a lot, in those Night City Wire things, and yeah. So I'm very disappointed about that. And so let's get to the RPG action adventure thing, right? And then I'm going to let you talk about your experience.
Okay.
But that's my biggest problem, because I already had plans for my character. I wanted to make like a super stealthy hacker character. And it just feels like a lot of the mission design in this game is just pretty standard. Like, and it doesn't really work from a stealth perspective. Like, the stealth mechanics just doesn't work. Like, a lot of the missions are designed for you to get into combat anyway. So I spent a lot of time spending my points on the cool. You have like different like different options for how you want to build your character, like different traits or whatever. So there's cool, there's intelligence, there's body, there's reflexes and technical ability, right? So
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time like trying to flesh out the cool, trait, because that's supposed to be more stealthy stuff, and also like the hacking, the intelligence for hacking and stuff. And the hacking does sort of work because you can do certain things with that. So that's it's okay. I feel like Deus Ex does it better, but this is it's okay, right? Like the quick hacking system and all that. Like you can do some fun stuff with it. So I'll give them a pass on that one. But for the stealth, it just doesn't work at all because it's just the way like the missions are structured. It's like you have to shoot. Like you have to. I don't think there's been a mission where I've like fully beat it in stealth because it just doesn't work. Like, and I don't know if it might be like the enemy AI, because I feel like there's no like transition from them, being suspicious that someone's there and then going full on alert kind of thing. Like it happens so suddenly. And sometimes it's for the most like silliest thing, as well.
The perfect example to go with that stealth not working. Once again, go back to that heist mission and the fact that you have to escape that building, but there's a whole bunch of guards. And obviously, you have to take out the guard to get access to a gun, but there was no way. I was not able to, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people were not able to get through that mission just to get to them elevators. There's no way in hell you can do that all in stealth because you will get spotted. It's inevitable. So.
Yeah, yeah. It's just it's done really poorly, like the stealth system. So at a certain point, I just decided, you know what, I'm just going to start putting my points into the reflexes and the body, which is like your health and then also like your weapons and stuff. So yeah, because that seems to be what the game wants me to do. It just wants me to shoot stuff. So yeah, like they changed the genre of the game from role playing to open world action adventure. Yeah, and you should have marketed it as that from the beginning, because that's exactly what it is right now. Like there's nothing role playing about this game. Like, and if they would have said that this game isn't like it's not Mass Effect, it's not Witcher, and it's not Deus Ex, it's really like open world. What's a game that would suit it?
Dying Light.
Yeah, it's open world Dying Light, or it's BioShock or something. Like it's really more that kind of style. Like it's essentially a shooter, like basically. And the open world stuff, the role playing stuff just doesn't work. So if they intend to fix that, they are going to have to rework the game from the ground up. Like it's going to have to be a lot of changes to kind of like turn it into what we thought it was going to be. But yeah, I think I have a lot more issues as well. But I'm going to hand it over to you. So let me know what your experience is with the game.
Well, you can feel free to jump in any time if anything I say you also wanted to say. First and foremost, let me say I have been playing on PS5. The game still has a lot of issues on PS5, and even though there was a hot fix that was released last night, the game still crashes persistently. And anytime it crashes, it takes me out of the experience entirely. In fact, due to it crashing twice last night, I actually have decided I'm just going to delete the game and play it when they release the updated version next year. So I'm not going to go back to finish. I was well into Act 2. Some pretty important things happen, but I just can't bring myself to constantly play stuff that continues to crash. Even when I was reviewing games on PS5, when I first got access to some of these games, there were no crashing issues. But when you are in a story game and it crashes, it constantly takes you out of the experience. It is not enjoyable whatsoever. So that's one issue. To go to some of the stuff you said about, go ahead. What'd you say?
No, I was just saying that sucks. Like, it really sucks that people are having such issues with even running the game. Like, you can't,
I mean,
you can't even begin to enjoy it if it's just crashing like that.
Yeah, I mean, it would happen where I would play it for about an hour or two, and then I would get to something pretty important that happens, and then the game just starts. You know, it goes to the screen and lets me know that the game had stopped, and then I can report the issue to Sony. And I'm like, yeah, but when I encountered that twice in the span of one playthrough, I said, okay, enough is enough. And also, I will add on to the fact that when I mentioned before, when you download it on PS5 or, you know, Xbox Series X, you know, it was about 101 gigabytes. Just when I had to do the latest hotfix, it was going to be another 50, 60 gigabytes. So that tells me that they have to condense the file size down, but because they're doing updates, this is going to just continue to become a huge file until the proper PS5 version is out. Then it will be reduced by a little bit, but it doesn't really make that much of a difference. So yeah, clearly there's a lot of things that have to be fixed. Now, to go to the gameplay in and of itself, I have to say that I was okay with the shooting mechanics in the game, even though it's not as polished as other games that I've played in the past. But one thing that I absolutely cannot stand about this game, it has to do with the hacking, because I've played a lot of games that do hacking 10 times better. You've already mentioned Deus Ex. A more recent example, Watch Dogs Legion. The hacking is so easy and intuitive in that game. It's like when I look at, you know, it makes you appreciate a game like that and how easy it is to hack. Because in this game, obviously you have to build up the points and stuff like that in order to be able to get better at the hacking. But it just seems like it's a really complex, overly detailed way to do something. And then that also it plays into a factor with the.
Do you mean the breach system, like where you have to pick the numbers and stuff? Do you mean that?
Yes, that, and just in general, when you also are scanning people and you're scanning, you know, stuff like that, it's not as intuitive because, again, go back to Watch Dogs Legion. When you scan somebody, an NPC, it shows, because of the deep profiler system in the game, it shows you, it's like a better attempt of making this into an actual person, where it goes into what their likes and dislikes are, stuff like that. Whereas if you use that in this game, it just shows the person's name, that's it. And not really any affiliation as to what makes that person tick. Now, obviously, this isn't the same type of game, so I understand why Ubisoft has a different approach to the NPCs. It's much more important in Watch Dogs Legion. But in this game, like you mentioned before, when you get into an accident and then the conversation that happens, it just doesn't feel like a realistic experience when you're having these conversations with the NPCs. And also, one other thing that I have noticed, I don't know if this is an issue on PC. There have been some instances where I would have a conversation with somebody, right? And then there is no option to end the conversation. You have to walk away from the person for the conversation to disappear. That 100% should not be in this game. You should be able to end the conversation because, take for example, this particular mission, and I've seen this has been something that people have been talking about. That's why I want to mention it. The mission when you, after you pull off the heist earlier in the game, and you're working with one of the fixers, it's the much older lady. She's telling you to go to a Ripper dock to get a reward. So I go to the Ripper dock to get a reward, and then when I look in and see all of the options that I can get, you have to look in a certain area to find out where the reward is at. Otherwise, you're just continually buying up stuff to actually implement and fix your body as a whole. It's not clearly displayed in the messaging where that option is, where the free option is. You have to look at it. And then when you look at it, all it is just a tattoo for your hands. It's nothing serious at all. So it's like there's a lack of communication in telling you where certain stuff is at. The mapping system when you're traveling to and from different locations, I also feel that could have been handled better. Once again, a perfect example. Watch Dogs Legion and Assassin's Creed. Whenever you are going to a location, they will clearly display on the map where it's at, and they will show you for the navigational purposes how to get there. And you can even fast travel to that location on your own if you want to, and just skip it all entirely. You can skip stuff in this game as well, but it's just like it's a better effort in making the world feel alive, making the characters feel alive. And two other issues I want to mention very briefly. staying on with the whole thing of you getting into the car and doing stuff. I did not like the repetition, whereas anytime I got into a car and I was in the passenger seat, then I knew I was going to be in for some type of gunfight with the enemies that I'm going up against. That happened entirely too much. From Act 1 to Act 2, it's like it's very predictable. And I'm like, it's like I already know if I'm going to be a passenger in a car, or I have to anticipate and expect to be shooting down some bad guys. And that I didn't like when you have to take that approach where you have to get so repetitive with it. But I understand for the sake of action in the gunplay to really emphasize that this is why they put that stuff in the game, which is fine. But again, I didn't like too much of that. And the last point that I will touch upon, and this is obviously something that I'm pretty sure a lot of people will disagree with me on, just by personal opinion. But when you are introduced to Johnny Silverhand and you see what Keanu Reeves brings to the actual role, it makes me feel like, personally, this is a game where you should have just been playing as Keanu Reeves' character the entire time. Because in that little intro sequence where they introduce the character, there is a lot more weight, depth, and a lot more development with that character in that small scene than there is ever any time where I felt development with my personal created character of V.
Yeah.
And that to me is like, if this was a game where it was just about Johnny Silverhand and you're playing as Keanu Reeves the entire time, I think that would have been 20 times a better experience. I understand they wanted you to have the whole custom player aspect, but it doesn't matter because, again, it's a first-person game. You don't see yourself that much unless you go up to a mirror and you want to, I don't know, pout or do a grin within the mirror or stuff like that. It doesn't really feel like it's really that impactful, but yet Johnny Depp's character has more. There's a lot more structure to the character. There's a story with the character. I just feel he's a much more interesting character than half of the other characters in the game. He's a lot more fleshed out as a character. And the fact that they were able to do that in that very short sequence where you're playing as him, it's just a better representation of the character. Also, he's a badass character. And when you first play as him, he's leveled up, has all the weapons. It just felt like the gunplay was better for I don't know if that was just me. He had better reflexes, better gunplay, obviously more health. So I'm assuming as you continue to level up, you will play the same way. But it's just the way they introduce him. It's like, this is who I want to play as. I don't care about the V character now because obviously I know they're telling this whole backstory, which makes you feel as though you are trying to explain the backstory because you choose the life path, so on and so forth. But it doesn't feel like it's a well-developed character yet. Whereas Keanu Reeves' character, it's all there, and it takes very little time to establish that. So that would be my only other complaint, is that it would have been great if this game was just about him. You're playing as him, not your own character, because it feels like they put more thought into having him a part of this project. And if there's one final thing I can say, when I look at the game right now, it feels like when you go back to the statement you made earlier about the 2-year development cycle, it feels like this is everything that this game was released as. This is the base game of what we are building, but it is still not 100% to what our vision is.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's why it's a problem, because they should have given it more time, as much time as it was needed, because it could have been something special, but because they didn't do that, it leaves a very bad reputation on the company and the devs, unfortunately, because I'm pretty sure any dev that has this game on their resume, now they will also be looked upon as a caution if they wanted to get another job. And that's what I hate most about this, is because the devs are being blamed for it when initially it's the management are the ones that said we need to hurry and get this game out. So it's very unfortunate.
Indeed. I think you left something out though, because you were saying that one of your biggest issues was that your character's penis kept glitching in the game.
well, let me add this. Well, I didn't say that. But I will say this. Just to go what you said on earlier about the hype, that character creator thing was significantly overhyped by both CD Projekt Red and the fans of the company, because it is absolutely nothing to the character whatsoever. So what? You can enlarge the size of your penis. That doesn't even make a difference in the game itself. And again, one other little thing I will add in terms of the next gen update. I don't know what the next gen update is. I will say that playing on PS5, I did have the control. I did feel some of the haptic feedback while driving. But there are certain aspects of that game, like when you have to go to the Ripper dot and have those procedures done, you should feel some type of motion on your controller when you're going through that stuff. And I didn't feel any of that. So clearly, they have a lot to do, and I can think of ways they can improve it with the DualSense on PS5. I can think of ways they can improve it with Xbox Series X. But right now, it clearly needs a hell of a lot more work with just the base game itself before they even think about all these other little things. So I'm very curious to see how they intend to make the game better. But for right now, I just can't bring myself to play it because, again, the crashing, the bugs. I've seen a lot of the bugs people have had on PS4, Xbox One. Those are significantly worse than what I've experienced. But it's just bad that it's in there in the first place. But yeah, we'll see what they do long term to try and get people interested in the game again, because a lot of people I know have stopped playing it altogether, or haven't even bothered to play it just because they're like, whatever, it is what it is.
Yeah, and I echo your thoughts on Johnny Silverhand as well. Like that, he's clearly the most interesting character, you know, and I wouldn't actually be surprised if there was some kind of spin-off or even, you know, like a DLC or expansion where you just play Johnny Silverhand or something, because it seems like there's so much stock put in that character, and even in the because I actually purchased the book on, like, they had like a book that's about like the game and the lore and everything. I forgot the title of it, but they released it a few months ago before the game, and there's a lot of build up to, you know, Johnny's story even in that book, and the whole Arasaka bombing and like the big incident that happened in 2020 or whatever. So yeah, like there's a lot of, like, you know, his story in this world. So I'm surprised that they didn't just make the game about him, like you said. Yeah, because what we've got here with V is like, it's just very shallow at the moment. And yeah, that part where you got to play as Johnny Silverhand was really good. Like even it felt like the mechanics were better, like the guns and like it was good. It was really good. And you know, I was just like, yo, when does my character control like this? Like,
so I definitely was not the only one that felt that then. So that confirms, yeah, that's exactly the feeling I had. It's like, you know, you go back to using your character and you see you still have to level up, do all this other stuff. It does not feel, it's like they're teasing you of a better character that you can use, but you can't use that character. So that kind of sucks.
Yeah, exactly. And then also one more thing I wanted to add, because there's a lot wrong with the game, but one more thing I wanted to talk about is I feel like they didn't push the Cyberpunk theme as far as they could have, I think. Like, considering that, you know, you're supposed to have all this cyberware, all these augments and stuff. I feel like they could have done a lot with that in terms of the gameplay and how it works. Like, even just little things like the mini-map. I feel like the mini-map is very bad, especially like when you're following like a path on the GPS or whatever. Because it's so like small and close up that whenever there's a turn, it just comes suddenly, and like you don't know that you have to turn. So what they could have did is just like make the path in the actual road, and you know that could be part of like your cyberware or something. Like it, you know, your cyberware tells you where you need to go and stuff.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So they could just highlight the actual road, and I've seen other games do this, where they highlight the path in the actual road, and that would make sense in this game because you are like, you know, you have all this tech in you.
That is exactly what they do in the Assassin's Creed and Watch Dogs game. You could clearly see where you're supposed to go. So it's no question about, well, where is the objective at? So I agree 100%. They could have done a better job with that.
Yeah, and then and also like customization overall, like I feel like you should be able to at least like get a haircut or change your hair or whatever. Like you should be able to do more with your actual the customization of your character. The crafting system and stuff, I do like that it's there because it adds another layer to the weapons and stuff because you can upgrade them and stuff. But I feel like the economy of the game is a bit off. I feel like you don't make money fast enough to be able to afford like a lot of good things, like because there's a lot of like cool cyberware that you can unlock, but they're very expensive. And even if you do a lot of the side missions, it takes a long time to build up money before you can get the cool stuff, I feel like. And then, you have the option to buy vehicles too. But those are, like, if you're buying vehicles, then you're not going to have enough money for the cyberware. Like, so it's, like, I don't like that. I wish there was more options to make money. Like,
I think one of our colleagues, I'm not sure if it was Tony Torrance or someone else, made mention of, there's no economy, so you're not making money in the game. And again, you were able to do this in other games like Grand Theft Auto, so on and so forth. So it kind of sucks that, at least from what I have played so far, there is not a way to any way to make money unless you are just doing the crimes. And I guess but it feels like there should have been another way you can make money to help you get to the top. That's what the whole thing is. V wants to be remembered for something amazing, and at the same time, I don't care too much about V as a character because they have told me that I shouldn't care that much about him as a character.
Yeah, for real. Like, because there are like side things, like you can help the police by catching like gangs or enemies or killing them or whatever. Like, so you can make a little bit of money that way, but it's really not a lot. And some of those missions are littered in areas that are too high, like they're too high skilled for your level. So it's like you can't. There's only so much of them you can do at any point in time. So the point of the game I'm at now is like I pretty much have to just do the main missions because like I can't make any money. I've done most of like the side quests except the ones that are like too high for my level or whatever. Yeah. So yeah, like I just wish there was more. I feel like they like there's not even really any mini games and stuff, like so it just feels very like bland and shallow. And it's like the story really is the main attraction. So
hey, now just one quick question I want to ask, because this was an opportunity. Obviously, I guess they couldn't do this. Have you seen any references to The Witcher in this game? Like, maybe had another version of the Gwent game that is playable in certain areas, or any posters with Geralt in it. Have you seen any of that in the game so far? Obviously, I believe they probably couldn't do that anyway because of the rights, but I'm just curious if they have anything pointing back to other games they've worked on in this game.
If there is, then I might have missed it. There actually is like an item of clothing you get on if you buy the game on Good Old Gaming, which is their app. Then you get like a bonus like clothing item inspired by The Witcher, but that's pretty much all I've seen. I haven't really seen any references or anything. And sometimes you get like these little documents that you can read as you're playing, but I don't read them. Because the world just doesn't feel authentic anyway. Like, so I'm just like, yeah, whatever. I don't care. So I don't bother to read them. So I don't know if there's any like references in those, but I haven't seen anything significant that references The Witcher. And I feel like the old CD Projekt probably would have had a lot more references and stuff, or just funny things and stuff. And that's another thing, like even the humor in this game is pretty bland. Like there's some moments that are like trying to be funny and it's not funny.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I agree.
But that's like my overall like thoughts on it at the moment. But I will say this though, I am still having fun with it. Like I'm still playing it, and I'm still interested to see where the story is gonna go. And I'm still interested in the game, but I'm just disappointed, at how much it's lacking. And just the fact that it's probably gonna take months, maybe like 4 months to a year for this game to become what we promised. That alone annoys me because I don't have time to play games like all the time anymore. Like I can't play every game and stuff. So the fact that you're telling me I've got to play this game twice, like to really get like the full experience of what, like I have to wait for you to fix it and then play it again to get the full experience of what I expected. Like that annoys me. And I feel like that's a bad practice that needs to stop in video games. But what were you going to say?
Well, yeah, I agree with everything you had to say because I feel like, it's a very risky situation because the first impression was supposed to be the lasting impression. So for them to release this game and then expect people to come back later, a lot of people may not come back later because, again, there are a lot of other games coming out, some that have been announced, others that have not been announced that we are probably going to be looking forward to a hell of a lot more. Now, I'm just saying, if this is not going to happen because we already know this game is nowhere near being done and completed, and it probably will again be something that might disappoint. The next Mass Effect game, if that game was to come out the exact same time frame as this rumored update for this game, I think a lot of people may say, well, to hell with this, I'm going to play Mass Effect. I don't know what the big game is going to be next year, but all I'm saying is whatever that big game is, I hope it doesn't come out the same time as this because once that update is out and they've added changes to the game or whatever, it's going to be hard to get people to just come back to the game because, again, it's about the first impression. Now, in the case of No Man's Sky, they have turned things around completely. So I guess it is possible that they can still have people come back and play it a second time around, but I think it's a very risky situation to put yourself in because of the fact of all the other stuff with the refunds and all of that adds on to the perception people are going to remember whether or not they want to play this game again or play another game that they release in the future now because of this. So they definitely would have to figure out some way to attract people back to this. And I'm curious to see how they intend to do that, but I don't think it's going to go well. But that's just my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, it just annoys me because I thought CD Projekt were different. And, this is one of the biggest issues that kind of soured me on gaming. Like, the fact that games are coming out broken and then you have to wait months for them to fix them. That stopped me buying a lot of games, period. And of course, like, other things going on in my life too. But like, yeah, like, that soured me on gaming. And I never thought I would would see CD Projekt do something like that. So that's left a bitter taste in my mouth. I don't trust them as much as I used to. But yeah, I'm still gonna complete the game. I'm still gonna play it. I'm still having my own fun with it. It's just very disappointing. That's all. But was there anything else you wanted to say?
And the last point I will say on this particular topic is I while I have deleted the game, I still intend to. I still am looking forward to seeing.
Wait, you deleted?
How? Yeah, I did last night. Right after that second crash happened, I said, "The hell with this! I'm going to download and play some stuff that will actually run correctly on the console." So I will say, I have written a lot of notes about my thoughts on the game, so I will still intend to post that on the website next week. But I am going to wait until the update is released because I feel as though that the experience is going to definitely be different. It might be more improved, but I don't have the patience right now to wait for them. And in terms of the PC version, they did mention when they had those hot fixes, they were still going to be doing stuff to PC version as well. So I feel like anyone that wants to play this game if they still want to play it, despite all of the bad stuff that has happened, I would suggest that they wait until next year, whenever the final game is out, and then give it a try. But I would not say, if you have the game already and you're trying to get a refund, I hope you are able to get a refund. But if not, then maybe you need to not bother with any more CD Projekt Red games for a while, because I feel as though they definitely have to. Yeah, let me add in this last point about what I think that they should do to repair all that has happened. Obviously, when you play around with people's money, you can't take any of that stuff back. What I was recommending they do, though, again, establish the people at the very top who were very much pushing this game, and they didn't communicate with the devs. Internally, whoever is the owner of this company, I don't know if it was the owner of the company that made that decision, but whoever is in power above those managers, they need to get rid of the managers. I'm not saying that, listen, I want to make it clear. I'm not saying that you fire people. I do believe, we are in a pandemic. A lot of people lost jobs already, so on and so forth. But something has happened with those individuals. If you don't fire them, they need to be suspended, and they need to be taken off this project and put on something else. Or just be demoted in their roles to some degree. But I do think that they need to pay the price for that. And I think that CD Projekt Red needs to be transparent. If these conversations are happening on Reddit and a lot of people are already talking about it, the public is already aware of this issue. So if I was the CD Projekt Red, I would just come out and make another statement and say, internally, there were some issues with the game. We have gotten rid of the people that made these decisions to move this thing forward, or we have somehow removed them from that position or whatever. I think they need to make that known. Secondly, I almost anticipate and expect, when they said that they were working on another Witcher game, they are going to work on another Witcher game, and I will not be surprised if they bring back Geralt, because they said previously he will not be in any future Witcher games. Now I think that's going to change entirely, because they know people like the character. The Netflix has the Witcher series on now as well. So I kind of feel like that will give them an excuse to bring him back, because they feel like they can get people's back in people's good graces if they release another entry in the Witcher series, because they are familiar with that series, with that world. So I could 100% see them doing that now as a result. But whatever they do, it's going to definitely impact the next game that they work on. So we'll see what that is.
Yeah, this is definitely going to impact them in the long term. And I think people are going to rightfully have a lot of doubts about whatever they choose to put out next. So it's going to be interesting. And the stock of the company has dropped significantly because of this whole,
Absolutely. Rightfully so.
Yeah. And the only question I'm left with, is I wonder how Mike Pondsmith feels right now, the creator of Cyberpunk. Like,
well, you mentioned that I definitely feel bad for him as well now, because we didn't have any of these issues with The Witcher. So the fact that you have this guy he's put his heart and soul into this concept, and then for it to be represented this way, it's kind of like, it sucks that that's how it turned out. I hope it doesn't impact the industry in other ways moving forward, where people are now always going to not give a project a chance because of what happened with this. But I'm especially mad that it's impacting him, because I feel like I don't want to get this into a racial thing, but I feel like we as black people have to fight for a lot of things. Any person of a different ethnicity, they have to fight for a lot of things a lot harder than someone else that is just given an opportunity. So it kind of feels bad that this happened to him, because obviously, I know he didn't have anything to do with the development of the actual game in terms of actually working on the game from a development standpoint. I mean, I would assume, but it feels like they're going to be looking for people to blame, and I hope he is not someone that gets blamed for any of this. But I do think that whoever is in charge, whoever made these decisions, these tough decisions, they need to pay the price for this in one way or another. There has to be some type of consequence. And I'm not talking about just losing money. Either they need to get demoted from that position, or, they have to make some decision about how to change things internally moving forward with how they work on these games and who approves over stuff, so on and so forth. But something has to be done moving forward. But yes, to answer your question, I feel very bad about him and his involvement in this, because I would hope it doesn't impact what he does in the future. But it makes me feel bad that he was involved in this and that he can potentially become a scapegoat because of what happened with the game itself. So,
yeah, I hope that doesn't happen. But I do feel bad for him because he really defended the game and CD Projekt, like, when they were getting attacked before the game came out and stuff. Like, he actually he really was outspoken and he defended the company. So I'm wondering if they even lied to him too about the state of the game and stuff.
That's possible. That's very possible, actually. They had to. I would assume there's no way that he knew about this ahead of time. So I think a lot of people were caught off guard, especially the devs, but the people in power, they knew what they had, and they knew that they wanted to prioritize. Let's not worry about our reputation right now. I want to make some money because I need to do this. I need to do that, and that is, there's a big issue with that. That has always been an issue with that in this country in general. So, it's just unfortunate that it came at this level and that there are others that are going to unfortunately be blamed for this. But I do hope in the long run, the people who were responsible for this, that made these decisions and they knew things weren't right, I hope they ultimately do pay the price, because they are the ones that should be getting all of the blame for this. Not the devs, not Mike Pondsmith either, but the people who actually made the decisions and said, this game isn't done, but we're going to release it anyway. Those are the ones that need to pay the price for this.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess we'll end on that note. We've gone into great detail here, talking about the course of Cyberpunk, from before release right up to right now. So this was a very very good conversation, I think. Like, I enjoyed it. Was there anything else specific you wanted to say real quick before we close this off?
Oh no, I think we've said a lot. I do want to give a shout out to, I know the Throwdown, Tony has been speaking in detail about this. I also want to give a shout out to Broken Games HD. I know he has done a lot of great videos on this stuff as well, and all excellent people who you should support. Also, Black Hokage as well. They've all made great content talking about the issues with the game, so on and so forth. So if you haven't checked that out, I would definitely encourage you to check out their stuff as well. But overall, it should be a great lesson for everybody not to hype up games, not to pre-order a game. Make sure that you listen and see everything before you make an informed decision about whether or not you want to purchase a game, because you can be very easily disappointed by something, and this goes to show that this was a case where we were disappointed. It's unfortunate, but let's hope that the people who, didn't make these decisions aren't impacted by it. Because again, I can only imagine all of the time the devs spent on this game and the sacrifices that they made, taking away time from their families, so on and so forth. I can only imagine how they felt to see everything happen as it's happening now, because it makes them look bad, also can impact their career moving forward. So I'm hoping that does not happen. But yeah, the people who did make these decisions to do this, I hope that justice prevails. They're the ones that have to pay the price for this. So we'll see what happens.
That's a fact. And yeah, this is gonna change my gaming buying habits from here on. So any game that I'm hyped for or anything, I'm not even gonna buy it day one. I'm just gonna wait. I'm gonna wait for the reactions, and if people are saying, if people are saying to wait, a few months until they fix it, that's what I'm gonna do. So yeah, I'm like, this is gonna definitely change a lot of things for me. The only game that's the exception is Final Fantasy, because I'm buying that day one.
So next year. So in other words, we have to prepare ourselves to have another discussion about this game next year, and if it is a flop.
Yeah, I'll be the first one on here, you know, if it is. But yeah, that's pretty much it. We welcome everyone to, you know, leave their comments, let us know what you guys think about this, and you know, we will be back again to talk about other games. Of course, you know, we're gonna do more like, you know, deep dives like this, I think, because this was really good, you know, just going through all the history and just dropping in our thoughts and commentary along the way. So yeah, that's what it is, man. Definitely leave your comments and feedback, and like Rich said, make sure you're paying a close attention to the throwdown and all the content those guys are putting out, because they did some great stuff on this as well. And yeah, just stay tuned to thecoalition.com, and we'll be back again. So take care, everybody. Have a great Christmas, great holiday, and stay safe.
Yes, stay safe. Happy holidays.